In this lesson, I want to show you how to deal with your controllers and specifically extra methods in your controllers. Because by default, Laravel offers so-called resourceful controllers. So you can do artisan make controller -- resource, and you get the controller with typical 7 methods. And I have a demo project with those methods already implemented. With our quick admin panel, it's generated partly. So you have list, so index, create, store, edit, update, show, and destroy. So 7 methods which are typical for so-called CRUDs. So create, read, update, and delete. Now, what if you want to have another function, another method, another action for something? So for user list, typical example would be approval of user. And from Laravel 5.7, we have a field for email verification, so email verified at, which is nullable or null or timestamp. And what if you want to approve user manually? So not verify the email by user themselves, but you want to approve that from admin. So technically, you should, one way, straightforward way of doing that is public function approve user ID. Then you get to user find or fail, probably find or fail user ID, and then user update email verified at equals now to datetime string. I think that would work. And then you redirect redirect to route. In our case, it is admin users index. So that would be the typical Laravel controller method for approve. And how do you specify that in routes? So in our web, we have that resource controller, and probably that would be get users user ID approve to user controller approve method. Now, keep in mind, be careful with those extra methods and specify them before the resource, because if you do that, this probably will work, but if you do this one, for example, user approve or something, that is the same URL as resource show method, so get users ID. So be careful that it could be overwritten. So in our case, we need to specify extra methods before the resource, and that would work. And actually, I want to show you 3 methods how to deal with those extra methods, extra controller methods. So approve and typical function is one way, kind of the most straightforward one. Another one would be to try to tie those methods to existing ones. So technically, what is an approve? It's actually an update. So instead of doing the approve, you would get the approval function to reference something like, so instead of that, it would be post, or actually put method to admin users ID, something with parameter email verified at equals now something. So that would be the URL, the calling, and then it would probably do the same. So probably we will need to specify this, since in this project we also have roles. So probably you would need to specify, so if not request email verified at, then do role syncing. So that would work, and it would update only one field, which is exactly what we need. That would be skipped and then redirect back to user list. So whenever you think about something custom in controller, try to think how to tie that to existing methods, whether it's store or update. What is the typical similar action? And that goes back to one presentation, one Laracon talk by Adam Wathan, called Cruddy by Design. I will link that in the in the description of this video. And it's a good talk. I'm not sure I totally agree with that philosophy, but it goes that controller should be as short as possible. And for this specific action, you should create more controllers. So for that case, you would create a user approval controller, and that method would be update on user approval. And so every controller actually would be only CRUD. So by definition, there should not be methods like approve. Instead, it should be one of those CRUD methods in a separate controller. This way you will have a lot of controllers, and that philosophy goes from Basecamp, guys. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that software company, and they have like hundreds of controllers in their application, which is Ruby on Rails, not Laravel, but still same MVC. So hundreds of controllers, and average amount of methods in controller is like 2 or 3. It's not even 4, it's not even 7. So it's really small amount of methods, but they're all basically CRUDs. So that's the idea behind Adam Wathan's video. I encourage you to watch that all, and it actually goes through refactoring of similar type of application. It's about podcasting. So for example, subscribing to podcast is actually inserting, so creating, storing data into pivot table. So it should be a pivot table controller specific. I think it's called podcast subscriptions controller, and then storing store methods on that one. And final thing, if you have a controller with some one method, so for example, I don't know, show profile or something, there's a new thing in Laravel. Well, I think it is new. Laravel invocable controllers. Invocable. I've written an article about it on my blog Laravel Daily. So this, you can specify the controller with only one method called invoke, which does whatever you want. It can specify parameters, it can accept parameters, and then all you do is specify that controller without any specific method. So you can also create just controller for one specific action with one specific method called invoke, and you shouldn't tie then that action to those CRUDs. It's not it's not insert or create or store or index. It's just invoke some action, which would be like the name of your controller. Then should be pretty clear about what you're doing with that controller. So these are kind of my tips on how to structure controllers. I agree with Adam Wathan that they should be short, including the amount of methods on controller. Probably you should tie extra methods for controller into specific existing methods, or create more controllers kind of to separate the concerns. And also it helps for readability, because shorter controllers are more readable. It's much clearer, because there were a few times in my career I started working on a project from another team. The project was already ongoing for a year or two, and I open up the code base for the first time and I see controller with like 2,000 rows. It's impossible to understand that. But if you have the controller methods divided by separate controllers with small amount of methods, and even better with shorter code, which we'll dive deeper into this course later, then it's much more readable and much more structured, and probably easier to navigate and to edit and to maintain.